This has got to be one of the weirdest keyboards that I have ever seen, but for some reason, I love it. It's the GravaStar Mercury V75. It's a Hall effect gaming keyboard that has a ton of top specs and could legitimately serve as a multi-purpose work and play keyboard with just a bit of extra emphasis on the play side of things. Now, GravaStar sent this keyboard over to me for review, but had no say in how I covered it. There's affiliate links in the video description if you decide that you want to check one out. And without further ado, let's jump straight into the details. Starting with build and design, this keyboard is wild. I don't typically review gaming boards like this, but because this was such an original design, I made an exception. I think that the look here is somehow both insane and over the top, while still looking cool and seeming somehow totally reasonable on my desk. There is not many keyboards that can truly find that balance. The case is primarily made of a matte black aluminum, which is formed into this crazy pattern that reminds me of Spider-Man 3 with the black suit and the Venom villain. It's got a web-like design with plenty of gaps that look into some translucent plastic. This plastic has its own dedicated backlights, which allow you to have quite the visual show around the sides of the case when they're turned on. Along the middle of the case are two glossy black racing stripes that give the board a sleek look, plus a bit of contrast against the matte black body. The keycaps are also translucent and allow the RGB backlighting to shine through. Their legends, however, are black on black, making it very difficult to read the keys in anything other than a very well-lit room. This lack of contrast adds to the blacked out appearance of the whole board, but it causes some big challenges in usability if you're not a completely confident touch typer. This particular color is fittingly called Stealth Black. It's very cool looking and can absolutely be a statement piece on your desk, especially if you're going for a primarily black aesthetic. The alternative color is called Mecha Gray. It's actually mostly a white keyboard with black and white keycaps and purple accents throughout, which makes it a very bold option, just in a slightly different direction. On the keycaps, there are colored tops, which creates much more contrast, making the legends easier to read, at least based on the images online. At the back of the keyboard, the gaps in the case are filled in with a solid colored plastic, meaning that the case lighting only extends around the front and the sides. In the back middle is your USB-C port, which is particularly important as this keyboard is wired only. Finally, the bottom of the case is fully made of some pretty basic plastic, but it does have an intricate design and some dual stage adjustable feet. These feet take the typing angle from a default of around 5.5 degrees up to 7.7 degrees or 10.9 degrees. Here are the complete dimensions for those of you who may be interested. Overall, the size and shape is totally reasonable for this type of keyboard, and there's just a little bit of extra length and width added where the case design sticks out from the body along the edges. For key layout, this is a 75% keyboard with a vertical oriented toggle and a small screen next to the arrow keys. There are 79 keys total, including a full function row with some slight spacing across the top. These keys do act as some media controls plus a handful of other functions, but they're not labeled at all other than F1, F2, F3, etc. On the right-hand side, there is a delete key next to the backspace, plus page up and page down. Based on the out-of-the-box configuration, if you combine these keys with the function button, the delete will act as insert, and page up and page down will act as home and end, giving you a little added versatility with these limited number of keys. If that functionality doesn't work for these or any other keys on the board, you can also customize this behavior to meet your needs using the GravaStar web app, which we'll talk about later. At the very top right of the board is a volume toggle. I refer to this as a toggle rather than a knob because it doesn't actually spin. Instead, it clicks up and down to adjust the volume. Plus, you can press it in to mute and unmute. It's just as useful as a knob, but with a slightly different feel and experience during use. Down at the bottom, you have some full-size arrow keys and a small screen as well that displays the GravaStar logo and changes colors with certain events on the keyboard. For example, it becomes rainbow when you enable caps lock, plus it briefly turns orange or green when you toggle between the gaming and office modes, which we'll also talk about more in detail soon. I had assumed that it would be possible to customize this screen to show something user specified, but up until this point, I haven't found any way to do it. There is a chance that you can do it with the downloaded version of the customization software, which again, we'll talk more about in that section. For typing, this black version of the keyboard has polycarbonate keycaps, whereas the white model uses polycarbonate for the clear part and PBT for the top solid portion. The polycarbonate material used is smooth and glossy. I find that it winds up feeling a bit more oily than other keycaps that I've used. This black model will likely get more shiny over time with the polycarbonate on top, whereas the white version with the PBT should hold up and resist shine just a little bit more. In the box, GravaStar actually includes a cleaning cloth, which is likely to help wipe away some of those oils from the keycaps and keep this board feeling a bit nicer. The keycap shape is cylindrical with a half-pipe-like design. They'll be a very familiar keycap shape for many people, but they continue to be not my personal favorite compared to the more spherical designs, which I think grab your finger better. The switches used here are magnetic Hall effect switches. They are a collaboration with Gateron, and they're called the Magnetic Jade Pro. They are technically hot swappable, but it's important to note that Hall effect keyboards like this are not compatible with traditional mechanical switches. You can see how the shape and design is different, plus functionally they work in different ways as well, with these Hall effect switches actually using magnetic fields to register even the slightest movements of the switch. This allows key presses to be customized in really unique ways, which is why this type of switch is preferred by many gamers. For typing feel, the switches are linear, and the experience isn't that different from a regular mechanical switch. The typing is incredibly smooth, with a middle-of-the-road level of force that seems to increase slightly as you bottom out the key. Internally on this board, there is an aluminum top plate, which makes typing a bit more firm. The marketing claims that this keyboard also utilizes a gasket-mounted design, but there's far less movement here than any gasket-mounted keyboard that I've ever used. My assumption is that this is related to the lack of flexibility on that aluminum plate compared to those made with more flexible plastics like polycarbonate. Either way, this board is not soft and cushioned. When you bottom it out, it is stiff and responsive, which is good in a rapid-fire gaming environment, but not the best if you're going to be doing a ton of long typing sessions. Despite the firm feel, the typing sound is not nearly as bad as you might expect. They include several layers of foams and pads, which helps with the sound, and as you'll hear, there's really only one big complaint from me. Since this was my first experience with magnetic switches, I didn't fully know what to expect. In the end, I was actually pleasantly surprised with just how good they sound and feel. The big exception though, as you could probably hear for yourself, is the spacebar, which is very loud and very hollow sounding. Other than that, the main keys sound nice and delicate with a great sound to them. The internal foams and pads more than make up for the firm plate and the gaskets. Now, obviously, this is meant to be a gaming keyboard first and foremost, but if you used it for a dual-purpose office keyboard, other than the spacebar sound, it's actually a pretty decent option. Moving on to customization, there are some important callouts that you'll want to hear if you're considering buying this keyboard. First of all, this board's behavior can be changed using a GravaStar web app, which is actually pretty solid. It has just about everything that you could ask for, which is great to see. However, there is also a downloadable version of the software that you can install on a Windows computer as well if you don't want to use the web app. As I alluded to before, I had speculated that this software download might be where the screen on the front of the board would be customizable. However, when you attempt to download it on a Windows machine, it will get flagged as malware. Now, I do not take this sort of thing lightly, so I looked in a little bit deeper. I ran the file through a site called VirusTotal, which checks it against 71 different virus detection platforms, and 19 of them came back with concerns. I reached out to GravaStar for comment, and they said, "The warning you saw is a common false alarm, and you can rest assured that our software is completely safe." Put directly, I do not think that you should download this software. Even if these are truly false alarms, until GravaStar can address whatever is causing those false alarms, their software should not be trusted. Do not risk your own online security just so that you can make some changes to a keyboard. Luckily, since you can customize fully on the web-based application without the need to download anything, I will still evaluate all of the functionality, but I wanted to make sure that I called out all of those concerns very clearly at the start so that you were aware. For customization capabilities on the web app, it lets you set 4 different configurations so that you can hold different profiles for specific games or activities that you use your keyboard for, which is great. Within each one of those, you can have separate key configurations, different actuation points for the switches, and even various RGB setups to give each profile a unique look visually. Going through the tabs, the Performance Settings tab lets you configure the magnetic switch actuation points. This is the fundamental benefit of having a Hall effect switch keyboard. For day-to-day use, there is a switch on the back of the board to swap between an office mode, which is labeled as N for normal, and a gaming mode, which is labeled as RT for rapid trigger. The normal office mode sets all keys to 1 millimeter of actuation, and you have the same point for both actuation and reset. They have a very cool visualization here to show you just what this looks like. As I press the key down, it lights up to let you know that it's been activated. Then it remains activated until my key comes all the way back up to that 1 millimeter point to reset. This is roughly what you'd expect from a normal keyboard with traditional switches. If you don't like the 1 millimeter distance, you can easily select all of the keys, then adjust that actuation point to the location that you want. If you instead switch the keyboard to the RT gaming mode, this rapid trigger section will enable, and you'll see new numbers appear on each of the keys. Now, in addition to that 1 millimeter actuation point, we have a dynamic reset and reactivation point. So let's see the difference. If I press a key down, you can see that it activates and then remains activated while I hold it. Then, as soon as I begin to release the key release reset point comes into play. Once I pass that distance, in this case 0.3 millimeters, then the key will reset or no longer be pressed. So even though I haven't fully released the key, it no longer registers as being pressed. Now for reactivation, this key press activate setting is used. So now if I push down 0.3 millimeters, it will reactivate the key. So without fully releasing the key, you can see that I can activate and deactivate this key over and over again if I need to. This ability to rapidly activate and deactivate a switch in quick succession can be really powerful in certain gaming scenarios. Best of all, if you have any issues with the behavior, you can fully customize each individual key to your liking. You can see that every key uses the same exact configuration, with the exception of WASD, which have tighter tolerances, making them even more responsive when gaming and using those keys for movement. On the Advanced Settings tab, you can set dead zones, which help to avoid issues with accidentally pressing keys. You can also adjust the polling rate down from the default 8000 Hz if you wish as well. The RGB Settings tab lets you adjust the effects, brightness, speed, and sleep settings for both the button backlights and the side flowing lights around the outside of the case. The Custom Keys tab lets you change the behavior of any key individually. You can use any normal key or mouse behavior, but notably there doesn't seem to be support for full-on custom macros, at least currently. Despite the lack of traditional macro support, there are several advanced options on the Advanced Key Functions tab. I won't go into full detail on all of these, but they allow you to perform multiple different actions based on how you interact with the individual switch. For example, holding down a key can produce one result while tapping it is different. Or multiple actions based on different depths of press can be configured, which effectively can let you create some simple multi-step macros with a single key, but it's registering as you pass each of those depths rather than all triggering based on one action. There's a lot of potential power here as long as you have the use cases to leverage them and the patience to figure out how they all work. Overall, this is a really powerful program that lets you do a lot of fine tuning if you're someone who likes to tinker. For backlighting, there's south-facing RGB backlights, plus the lights around the outside of the case, and that small screen that we discussed as well. There's 15 different lighting effects available, plus a custom option that lets you individually set the backlights in whatever pattern you choose. In addition to being able to use the software for backlight changes, you can quickly turn all of the lights on or off with Function plus Spacebar, and also these other keyboard shortcuts are available by default as well to help you make some quick changes. For connectivity, as I mentioned, this is a wired-only keyboard, meaning no Bluetooth and no USB receiver. The USB-C port is located in the back middle. The included cable is roughly 1.5 meters long. It's USB-A to C, and it's a rather robust, thick cable that's not super flexible, but should be pretty durable over time. You can use this keyboard with either Mac or Windows. There's a toggle on the back to switch between the two modes, and the keycaps have markings for both included as well. The polling rate for this keyboard is a very high 8,000 Hertz. Plus, GravaStar advertises high scan rates as well. 32,000 Hertz for a full key scan and 256,000 Hertz for a single channel scan. Put simply, scan rates are how often the keyboard itself is checking for the location of the keys, and then polling rates are how frequently those locations are getting reported out to your computer. All of those numbers in some way contribute to the overall keyboard latency, which is the amount of time between when I press the key on the keyboard and when the computer actually registers that press. From an overall latency perspective, this keyboard is very fast. If you're a casual gamer, this will be great. I used it while playing Borderlands and Risk of Rain 2, and it felt awesome. If you're a competitive gamer, this should also be very good. However, a myriad of factors go into determining actual real-world latency, so it gets really complicated to say whether this is truly one of the fastest keyboards on the market or not. And since this is not really a gaming-focused channel, I won't be doing any official tests to compare it against the myriad of other high-end gaming options out there. If that is your goal, I definitely recommend checking out some other reviews from other gaming-focused channels to get an idea of that. For pricing, the MSRP for the Mercury V75 is $180. This is absolutely an expensive keyboard. However, the gaming niche in general is a little bit overpriced, at least in my opinion. You can absolutely choose to get something that will get the job done for casual games and spend way less than this. Here's a couple of examples of non-gaming focused boards that would still work great for casual gaming and cost much less than this. However, you can also spend a whole lot more on a gaming-focused keyboard. Here's a couple examples of some very expensive gaming-focused keyboards. Given that the specs for the GravaStar are up there with a lot of these highly capable gaming keyboards, and especially since this has such a unique look while doing it, I get it. This is a sick keyboard. So let's summarize the differentiators and deal breakers. The biggest positive has to be the really unique, one-of-a-kind design here. It's super sleek looking with matte black and spiderweb-like details. It is definitely not going to appeal to everyone, but it'll be pretty irresistible to some people out there. The technical specs are high-end with 8,000 Hertz polling and high scan rates. There's Hall effect switches that are great for gaming, and the whole board is highly customizable with the web-based interface. Finally, typing is decent for a gaming-focused board, which is nice if you want a dual-purpose keyboard, with gaming being the top priority. For potential deal breakers, there is the flip side of the unique design. This keyboard definitely won't fit everyone's style or everyone's desk setup. The keycaps are not the best. They lack in contrast to actually be able to see the lettering on the keys. The shape of the keys is not my favorite either, and the polycarbonate material that they used isn't going to hold up the best. The unlabeled function row is also slightly less useful than it could be, though this is pretty standard on a lot of keyboards, so they are hardly the only ones with this shortcoming. The spacebar is quite loud and stands out as my biggest drawback when it comes to typing. The downloadable software has some major security concerns that could definitely impact your overall comfort with buying from GravaStar. I know that it would for me. And finally, the pricing is high for a keyboard, but it is also fair relative to other high-end gaming boards. As you can probably tell by now, this is a solid keyboard, And if you got this far in the video and you like this board, it's good to note that there are also two slight variations of this keyboard. First, the Mercury V75 Pro adds in some big legs sticking out off the back, which makes it look even crazier. Plus, it moves from an aluminum plate to a carbon fiber one. It goes for between $240 and $260, depending on the color. Finally, for the more modest, there is the Mercury V75 Lite. This has a similar look to the regular V75 that I reviewed in this video, but it removes the knob, moves to a polycarbonate case rather than aluminum, has fewer lights, lower scan rates, and less precise switches, but it looks pretty much just as cool for only $110, so a $70 savings off of this model. Finally, if you really want to go all in on this design, GravaStar even has a matching mouse called the X Pro that would look pretty sick alongside these keyboards. I'll link to all three of the keyboards plus the mouse in the video description if you want to check them out. If you wind up buying directly from GravaStar, you can also use code Cameron to save a little extra. It looks to be around 10%, but as this video is being filmed around Black Friday and holiday time, I don't know exactly how some other deals may or may not impact it. If you decide to pick one of these keyboards up, please let me know in the comments because it is legitimately cool and definitely not something like I normally cover on this channel. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more gaming keyboards or more over-the-top keyboards like this, let me know which ones. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.